Hello there. Thank you once again for joining me on the program, Your Doctor and COVID. I'm your host. I'm Dr. Mahendra Carpen. I'm the head of medical services and cardiology at the Georgetown Public Hospital Corporation. We are in August 2021 and we continue to talk about the COVID-19 pandemic because it is still here, it is still relevant, it is still deadly and fearful. Remember, if you have any questions or comments, please send a WhatsApp to 620-6275 or send an email to docandcovid@gmail.com. We continue to require the wearing of masks, social distancing, and washing of hands. As you can see, and I'm telling you that I'm wearing my mask to cover both my nose and mouth. I will take it off using the straps around my ears. Now here we are past the halfway stage of 2021, and we are still having major issues confronting this deadly COVID-19 pandemic. As of this moment, it has consumed the lives and taken the lives of over 500 Guyanese. That's 500 families, and unfortunately, some families have lost more than one person. And these are not gaps or holes that can be filled, but these are real losses felt by our fellow citizens in their households. And it continues to be a major problem in communities. It continues to affect the country in many ways, financially, economically, our freedom of movement, access to services. Everything has been affected one way or the other. We in Guyana continue to be fortunate to have a number of COVID-19 vaccines available to us for use. Of recent, we've had challenges in securing the second dose of the Sputnik V. The V stands for victory. We've had challenges securing the second dose for the Sputnik V. The second dose is different from the first dose because it uses a different viral vehicle to create the immune response that is required to fight against COVID-19. So those who would have had their first dose some time ago have been somewhat anxious, and a lot of questions have been asked about when is the second dose going to be available, what are the effects or consequences of taking the second dose beyond the 3-month period. We don't have all of the answers, but we know that the data is evolving. We are getting new information every day. And many of the questions that people are asking, I can't give an accurate answer right away. But we know that we are continuously learning about the disease, the virus, the vaccines, etc. There are a couple of clear facts that have emerged. One is that the persons who are dying are not in the vaccinated group. This is not just rumors internationally, but this is what we are seeing right here in Guyana. Of the 500 persons that have unfortunately died in Guyana since the start of the pandemic, not a single person had been fully vaccinated. The first part of the pandemic, we had no vaccines. But since February of 2021, Guyana started vaccinating its population. And since that time, if you were to say, okay, the first person was fully vaccinated by May, since then to now, we've had almost 400 deaths, and none of the 400 deaths were seen in persons who were fully vaccinated. And remember the definition for fully vaccinated. And with the vaccines that we have available, we need 2 doses to say that you have the full dosage. These doses can be given as early as 3 weeks apart and as far as 3 months apart. After the second dose, we wait a period of 2 weeks or 14 days before we can say, yes, this person who has received 2 doses is now fully vaccinated. Because it takes some time for the body to start producing an immune response or the antibodies that it needs to fight off the virus. So, since the start of our vaccination program, we assume that the time period where we started having fully vaccinated Guyanese was sometime in May. From May to August, we have had about 400 deaths, and not a single death was seen in a person who was fully vaccinated. This has been borne out throughout the world, where 99.999% of all the COVID-related deaths have been seen in persons who are not vaccinated. The numbers don't lie. The numbers are starkly apparent to anyone who wants to examine them. And that tells quite a story that the vaccines have been helpful in preventing deaths. And this is true even with all of the dangerous variants that have shown up recently. Remember, the original strain of the COVID-19 virus was discovered in Wuhan, China, and that was labeled the alpha type of the COVID-19 virus. Since then, we have had several different mutated or viral variant strains, The most deadly of which so far that we have seen is the Delta variant, which would have been recognized first in India. The good news is that regardless of all of these prevalent variants that we are seeing around the world, the vaccines that we have available still appear to be protective against severe COVID and against hospitalization in an ICU, against intubation and being put on a ventilator, and against death. One important point that we need to recognize is that the vaccines do not prevent you from getting infected with COVID-19. But if you do get infected, you will not become severely ill. You can have mild symptoms, just like the mild flu that we have all been accustomed to throughout the years. You can get a flu and you recover without having to be admitted to the hospital or without being put on a ventilator or being put in an ICU, etc. So it's important to recognize this fact, that you may still get COVID even if you're vaccinated, but you will not get severe COVID. And this is why it is very important that you continue to maintain all of the recommended practices and guidelines that have been there from the start of the pandemic to help us reduce our exposure and our chances of becoming infected. And that is to wear your mask, to practice social distancing, and to sanitize as often as possible. It is not a choice to choose between masks or vaccine. You have to do both. This is not ordinary times. This is not regular times. So it therefore calls for extraordinary solutions, extraordinary sacrifices, so that we can be able to get on top of this pandemic and return to some level of normalcy in our daily lives. So I want you to remember very carefully that the vaccines still offer us our best chance of reducing severe COVID. It offers us the best chance of survival if you were to get infected by the coronavirus or COVID-19 virus. So we continue to recommend that persons above the age of 18 or 18 and above, in Guyana at least, be vaccinated against COVID-19. Now, there are places in the world where they have started vaccinating children. And this is going to be an interesting topic at some point for us to discuss because, as you know, we're now in August and we're expecting that schools may be reopened in September. So the question about vaccination of children, vaccination of teachers, workers in the schools, and everyone who is expected to play a part in the education of our children, the question of vaccination for all of those persons, including parents, becomes a lot more relevant as we approach the new school term. It is important that those kinds of decisions and discussions occur now, so there's enough time for individuals to make up their minds about their vaccination choices. We still have a choice. It is not yet mandatory. It may never become mandatory. But we hope that persons are able to discuss with the right, relevant, knowledgeable persons, if they themselves cannot make up their minds, to know what the right choice is, what the safest choices are. What we know for sure, and we see around the world, that yes, all vaccines, like all medications, have some side effects. But if you were to weigh side effects against potential benefits, the risk versus benefit analysis shows you that there is clearly more benefits to taking the vaccines than the risks of taking the vaccine. So you have more benefits if you take the vaccines versus the risks. And definitely, if you were to get COVID-19, your chances of survival without a vaccine are much less than if you were to be vaccinated. So those are important lessons, important facts for us to remember as we try to make these decisions about individuals taking their vaccines and as we try to decide about children. So far, only one or two of the vaccines that are available in this part of the world, not Guyana yet, have been approved for use in children. These are the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines that have been approved for uses by children in 12 to 18 years, and they're actually looking at them now in a younger age group. The data is not yet available for analysis, so we cannot really make decisions yet for those children who are below the age of 12. But so far, when we look at the data from the Pfizer and Moderna use in the 12 to 18 age group, or 12 to 16, where it was studied more extensively, we see that there is no great overwhelming side effects that have been reported. There is a concern of something called myocarditis, but the early data shows clearly that these children, the rare occurrence of myocarditis, which is less than 0.0001 or 0.0004, these children, if they do develop myocarditis, they recover within a couple weeks to months. So even those very rare side effects that are seen with these vaccines in children are not fatal, and children usually recover from them after some time has passed. Of course, if this is your child, you will be extremely concerned. This is a very scary thing to have a sick child with any ordinary illness, much less something that doctors are telling you it's affecting the heart, it's affecting somewhere else. But rest assured that so far all of the data that has been analyzed across the world has been overwhelming in their safety profile for use not just in adults, but also in children. So when it comes to that time where we have these vaccines available in Guyana, that is the Pfizer and the Moderna, on a more ready basis and a more available basis, this is a discussion that we will have. This is an approach that we are certain to be examining in the future as we look towards vaccinating the majority of our population. So I hope this would have helped us all to understand a little bit more about the COVID-19 pandemic, the effects of vaccines, etc. And remember, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to send a WhatsApp to 620-6275 or send an email to docandcovid@gmail.com. Thank you for joining me.